Good evening, everyone. I am so glad that we are doing this evening. I'm so thankful that all of you can join us here. We have a problem in this country. Americans are dying at the hands of our police. 518 shot and killed in the first 6 months of this year, on par with last year. And police are dying too. 28 of them in firearm-related incidents, a 56% increase over last year. And it is only July. Meanwhile, a brand new New York Times poll finds that 69% of Americans say that race relations are bad. The highest level, that's since the Rodney King riots back in 1992. Is this feeling because of a crime problem? Is it because of a race problem? Is it a police problem, or all of the above? Well, tonight we have brought together community leaders. We brought together mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters. They're here in this audience. And of course, black, white, and of course, blue as well. All in this studio to do something very powerful, to listen to each other, whether we agree or not, especially when we disagree. We have to listen to each other, because being heard, really being heard, is the only way that we can begin to come together and solve this. Do you guys agree with that? Yeah, so applause. Do you agree with that? Good. So we're going to do that here in the studio. We're going to engage each other, and I hope that you engage with us at home as well and start to have conversations. So I'm going to get everyone in the audience a chance to talk. Hopefully everyone will get a chance to talk. But before we do that, I want you to be respectful of the people who are here on stage, because here with me now are the families of two victims cut down by gunfire just this past week, and that is Rick Zamarripa. He is the father of the police officer, Patrick Zamarripa, one of the Dallas officers shot and killed by a sniper on Thursday night. And Patrick's stepmother, Maria Del Rosario, Zamarripa, is also here, along with his brother, Carlos Zamarripa, and his uncle, Fernando Zamarripa. So thank you so much. I know it's a very painful time for you. It's also a painful time for Quinetta McMillan, the mother of Alton Sterling's 15-year-old son. Sterling was shot dead last week outside of a convenience store in my hometown of Baton Rouge by a police officer. So again, to all of the families here on stage with me, and to all the people who are in the audience and at home who are grieving right now, we are honoring your loved ones, and I'm so sorry for your loss. So let's start with that premise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dad, this is very emotional. How are you?
Oh, I'm trying to hang in there, but I think I'm coming around okay.
Yes. How are you doing?
It's been tough. It's been tough around the house.
No,
Seeing him cry, and
Yeah, go ahead.
We have our moments, you know.
You have your moments.
Yeah.
As I would imagine. So I know that your son was out protecting protesters, voicing concerns over police conduct. You knew something was wrong when you said when you texted your son, or he didn't text you. What did you know?
Right. At the time, I'll watch TV, and he told me, Dad, they're going to move me to patrol. I'm going to be riding a bicycle, I'll be downtown. And when I heard the flash news, two police officers were gunned down in Dallas, I knew at that time it was Patrick. So I got on my phone and I texted, Patrick, are you okay? He usually all the time, Dad, he'll say, he'll call me or text me, I'm okay. I'll call you back later, I'm okay. I said, okay, so I know he's doing his job, so, and later on we'll get together, but this time I felt it, gut feeling. He wouldn't call me back, and I knew it was him.
Yeah.
I kept telling him, it's okay, he's okay, he just can't call you right now. He'll call you later, you know, he's okay, just, you know, let's just pray. And I texted him, I said, you know, text him and said, Patrick, please, you know, call your dad, he's crying. That was around 10:30, and we didn't hear from him.
You're Carlos?
Yes.
You are on the verge of tears at every moment. I can see it.
Because it's hard, because I was the one who contacted my mother the first time, very first out of all the family members. Because when I first got word that there was something going on downtown, just like my father, I had this knot in my stomach that I could not shake. It was a pain inside of me that I knew a part of me was gone, my brother. I felt it instantly. It's like a piece of me instantly left right away, and it's almost surreal to know that I'm not gonna have my brother no more. To know that I'm gonna have that pain all the time, knowing that I'm not gonna have an older brother to call for advice, or to get the earful from an older brother advice that a little brother hates to get, but I would love to hear right now.
And you're gonna miss it.
I would love to hear 2 seconds of my brother's voice of him telling me as a little brother.
What did you say, Maria?
If he's gonna miss Patrick getting on to him.
Yeah. Fernando, your nephew served in the military. You said he knew no fear. Did he talk to you about the dangers of being a police officer? Did he knew about the dangers being involved?
He knew about the dangers. Patrick, his goals, like he said at the very beginning, he wanted to become a police officer. As he was young, he first took note of the uniform that I wore when I was in the military. And he always admired it, and he's told me someday he's going to wear the uniform. And he did. When he became of age after high school, I was so proud of that moment when he did. And he knew the danger, especially all veterans do, especially when they say the oath of their oath of enlistment when they go in. It's one that we never forget as service members and veterans. Mm-hmm. And we still hold it dear in our hearts, our oaths. And that oath is just that we swore to support and defend the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And that's the same oath he took. Mm-hmm. From all enemies, foreign and domestic. Foreign and domestic. And that's the same oath I took among all other veterans. And Patrick knew that. And he also bare faith allegiance to the same phrase, same cause. We all did. And he took that and he ran with it. And he became that police officer. He knew the danger, especially when you become a veteran.
And that's why you do it, because you want to do it. You know the dangers, and some people said that they just couldn't
and you're
do
ready to face
without
it,
doing what they want to do.
And to obey the orders of the President of the United States.
Some people may think that you're on different sides, right? But all pain is the same. Quineta, there were protesters out in Dallas. They were protesting the death or the killing of your son's father by Baton Rouge police when all of this happened. Your son spoke out today, and he said that he wanted Americans to come together, to unite and come together as a family. Let's listen to this young man, and then we'll discuss.
I feel that people in general, no matter what the race is, should come together as one united family. There should be no more arguments, disagreements, violence, crimes. Everyone should come together as one united family. I want everyone to protest the right way. Protest in peace, not guns, not drugs, not alcohol, not violence. Everyone needs to protest in the right way, with peace. No violence, none whatsoever. You
okay? I see you're wiping tears away. You and Alton must have been, you are proud of him.
I'm very proud of him. Just to know that my son is only 15, and some people look at him as if he's a lot wiser than what he is, and he really is. He knows right from wrong. He knows that what is going on right now in America is not right. And he just wants justice for both sides.
What would you like people to know about the violence that some African Americans feel when it comes to police officers and policing in this country? That's a clean one. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want the world to know that, whether you're an officer or whether you're just a regular normal person, both sides should, be punished the same way. Yeah. If an officer do something that is not right, then he should get his punishment for whatever it is that he done wrong. Vice versa, as a normal person. Yeah.
And you said to me, your heart goes out for all the families involved, for the officers.
you have no idea how much it goes out. Just even before the interview, we had no clue who we were, no clue whatsoever. And we just started talking. And I just told him, I said, you know, this is our unity right here. This is it. I had no clue who they were. They had no clue who I was.
What do you say to this family?
I say to this family, we have to stay prayed up no matter if you're in Dallas, no matter if you're in Baton Rouge. We all have to remember to keep God first. And that's the only way our pain will be able to be healed. There's nothing nobody can humanly possibly tell us to make us feel better.
What do you say, Carlos?
What my brother would want me to say, he'd want everything to stop. He would want peace. He'd want good to come out of all of this. Whether we all sit down and just take a second to realize that some good has to come out of it. Because that's what my brother did. Every day when he put on the badge, he went out for good to help somebody. Because that's the kind of heart that my brother had. He would only want good out of this. He would only want peace.
Dad, what do you say?
My son, you know, as he was growing up, I said, and I was telling him, you know the difference between right and wrong. Do the right thing all the time. And then later on, he told me he wants to be a cop. I said, be that good cop. Don't be that bad cop. Be that good cop. He said, Dad, I will. I'll make you proud of me. I'll make you proud of me. I'll do the right thing. He said, I got this. I got this, Dad.
Patrick.
And I believed it, because Pat, he would give you his last dollar in his pocket if he had it, and you needed it. Just the other day, the same day right before he got killed, he helped feed a hungry person. He took him to buy something to eat. What I was told, that hungry person sat right behind Patrick and ate his lunch or dinner, knowing Patrick would take care of him. He felt safe around Pat. Pat didn't see color. He didn't care if you're white, green, purple. He's a true Mexican hero. He's always been my hero since day one. And he was my little hero, and now he's a big hero in my heart. And nobody can ever take that away from me.
And you were his hero too. You never told me? You were his hero. He loved his dad. He adored his father. They were best friends.
You all need healing. The country needs healing.
Yes.
What can you say to the country now about healing? There's two families, again, people would think are on different sides, but all pain is the same. What do you say to the country, Dad?
This has to stop. By taking another person's life, it won't make the other person's life come back. You know, we need to all live together, be one strong nation under God, you know. Let's all live together, love each other, help each other out, and just not stop what we're doing, stop all this killing.
Quiniana?
I've been saying the same thing since it all started. You know, violence to violence is not gonna never be the answer to nothing, especially not in the situation that me and this family is sharing right now. And I think we all come together to say that we want peace. We want peace for both families.
There's a lot of pain, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of suffering on the stage, and a lot of it happening around the country. And I hope you all are listening to this so that we can come together. I want to introduce, thank you for telling your stories. I want to introduce now someone who is my personal mentor, who has a connection to the Dallas community. His church is there. He's a resident there. He's a pastor of the Potter's House. Bishop T. Jakes, and he's also the host of the T. Jakes Show, which is coming this fall, which will also provide healing to the country. I'm so glad that you're here. You've heard these two families. They've shared their common loss. Loss is terrible. It's not black and white. It's not police officers versus other people. Pain is pain. What do you say to these families?
First of all, my heart goes out to this family. I'm really, really touched by your pain. I don't think that any reasoned person could see the pain that's on the stage tonight and not be touched by it and in some way be related to it and connected to it. I think that our country has a responsibility to bring about peace. And in order to have real lasting peace that vindicates the tremendous loss that we see on the stage today, we have to have peace and justice collaboratively. And I don't think that we can really have one without the other. I think that we can have justice. And there's a sharp difference between justice and vengeance. I think that there is a way that we can sit down as reasoned people, discuss the atrocities that we see on the stage tonight, and come to a reasoned solution that gives us justice, that gives us peace, and takes the choices out of the hands of the vigilantes who take things into their own hands and go about it in a way that is divisive. Clearly today, it is not blacks against whites or whites against blacks. When you really talk to people, you find out that we really want the same things. We want our children to come home at night, all of our children, whether they're wearing blue or blue jeans. We want them to come home at night. And surely there ought to be a way that we can get that done.
You just said there's no, go ahead. Yeah. You just said that there is no black suffering, no white suffering. There is just suffering. People fear that we are being torn apart in this country. Are we being torn apart, or were we ever that close together?
We are only being torn apart if we let people tear us apart.
Yes.
I think that we're only torn apart when reasoned people remain silent. There are good people in all of our communities, and good people need to stand up and say and decide, as Patrick's father said, he said, be a good cop, not a bad cop. His own statement admits that there are two different types. When there are bad cops, we need to have our judicial system work the way that it says it's going to work. It needs to be blind and not peak, depending upon electoral processes and what's going on in politics and what pressure is placed on them. We need a criminal justice system that we can count on, because if we don't have that kind of criminal justice, people will seek vengeance and call it justice. There's no justice on the stage here. These are good people, all in their respective places, and we owe it to them and to their sons and their loved ones to come together and solve this problem without politics taking it over.
Yeah. Thank you, Bishop. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for having us.
Our hearts are with you and our prayers, and the country, really the world that's watching. Thank you so much. Okay? We appreciate you coming on. So we're going to be right back with more answers to your questions in our live town hall event. We're going to take questions from the audience. I hope that you stay tuned, and I hope that this program will help heal the country, at least begin that healing. Black, White, and Blue America 2016 will return in just a moment. Welcome back, everyone, to our live town hall event, Black, White, and Blue America 2016. This is an unprecedented gathering of citizens, police, and experts in an America where 69% of people, in the latest New York Times poll, it says that race relations are bad. In an America where 2 African-American men and 5 white police officers were killed just last week. Let's take a look at the facts. In the first 6.5 months of this year, 518 people have been shot and killed by police in this country. 46.1% of them white, 24.5% black. But those numbers from the Washington Post don't tell the whole story, because whites are 77.1% of the total population and blacks are only 13.3%. And as President Barack Obama pointed out last week, African Americans are 30% more likely than whites to be pulled over by police. I need to tell you that one of the reasons it is so difficult to break down exactly what is happening in encounters between police and African Americans is that the data can be conflicting. Case in point, a new study from Harvard, it finds that black men and women are more likely to be touched, handcuffed, pushed to the ground, or pepper sprayed by a police officer. But the study finds no racial bias when it comes to police shootings. So we'll discuss all of that tonight. I want to begin the questioning tonight, though, and I want to turn to Charlene McCray, as the First Lady of New York City. And we're fortunate, very fortunate to have you here, First Lady. Your husband is the mayor, Mayor de Blasio of New York City. He happens to be white. We want to give some perspective to people here. He's the head of the largest police department in the country. You have 2 children, Dante and Kiara. You said this is very personal for your family. What do you say to start off this questioning tonight for us?
Well, this is a terrible, terrible, painful time for us in this country, and we will continue to mourn while we will continue to mourn for so much longer, we still have to move forward. And we have to reach out to each other. We have to comfort each other. We have to rally around the good that is everywhere. And we cannot, it's not healthy for us to live in a place that is negative and divisive. It's not good. And tonight I'm very pleased that we are beginning to talk about all of these issues that affect us so deeply, that we can talk about solutions. That's what I'm most interested in, is talking about solutions, because while these conversations may be uncomfortable, they're absolutely necessary, and we have to get to some place where we can get tangible ways to move forward.
And you're talking about solutions, and you said that one of your solutions is a more diverse police force, including women who have social skills to help us resolve conflict. 2, you said more mental health services for our officers and communities. And 3, fewer guns. And you wanted to know, does any of this make us safer? What are the solutions? Thank you, First Lady. So I'm going to present that to you. Cedric Alexander, as a former police chief, what are the solutions? What do you tell the First Lady of New York City?
Well, I certainly agree with Ms. McCray on a number of things she just said. First, starting with mental health. That's probably one of the biggest issues that we have in this country we're confronted with. We know that policing is a very stressful profession. We know that they deal with a lot. We know that they go from one call to the next and the next and the next. And over time, certainly cumulative stress does occur, just like it would in any individual. Police officers are nothing but human beings. And we need to look at that, but in a much broader way. That's on the police side, but on the community side, we also know statistically that we have rising numbers of people that we're being confronted with, police officers particularly, that have mental health issues. And when you have one person over here that has a mental health issue, and then you have police officers themselves, regardless of what their mental or emotional state may happen to be, they're going to converge, and there's going to sometimes be conflict. Then what we end up with, quite frankly, is a situation which we're trying to explain. Because one thing we cannot forget in all of this, police officers are called for everything. You heard that from Chief Brown. That's very true. You got to be a mental health counselor, marriage counselor. You got to know social services. You got to know a variety of different things, because whatever is not functioning or working in our government, police officers end up being the first responders, and they end up being the ones that are called into these situations, which they have to explain in a very tough time now in America, where people are so angry and people are so upset, we can't even hear each other to even try to get to the solution, Ms. McCray. And I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have that is in front of us right now.
We need to deal with mental health issues?
We need to deal with mental health issues in this country,
right?
Because there's a lack of mental health services that is in abundant need, not just in large cities, but in small cities.
Yeah.
And if you look at our police officers, we talk about the health of them. We want to make sure that they're taken care of, because what we're asking them to do is a huge job and a very tough job. And it just doesn't affect white officers. It affects all officers.
But here's the thing, that's what the Dallas Police, are you guys in agreement with that? We need to deal with mental health in this country? A show of hands, you're in agreement with that? Okay, all right, good. So we'll discuss that, but you have a very interesting question. This is James Ramsey. He's a grad student and campus minister at Harvard University. What's your question? Thank you for joining us tonight, by the way.
Hi, thank you. My question is related but a little different from the current discussion. In the eyes of law enforcement and the criminal justice system, my question is, what is it about black people that make us seem to police officers to be more dangerous, or in cases of police safety, our lives less valuable or even expendable? whereas our white counterparts in similar situations either walk away from those encounters unharmed, or if they don't, those offending police officers are held accountable.
Yeah. That's a good question. Gary McCarthy, I want to go with you. Gary McCarthy, by the way, is a former police superintendent in Chicago. You led the department that was doing the controversy, Laquan McDaniel, 17 years old. You unfortunately lost your job in part because of that. What do you say to this question for him about seeing people of color as more threatening than than whites?
Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, James. I don't think it's the case, quite frankly. I think that we have to, if we're going to have a conversation, and Mr. McCray actually said that we need to have a conversation, you can't have a conversation one way, right? That would be a harangue, that would be not a dialogue. And what's happened in this country so far, my estimation, is that it's been a one-way conversation about the police, but not including the police. So questions like this need to be asked, and they need to be answered. But the facts are such. At the end of the day, take the city of Chicago. 80% of our murder victims are African American. More than 90% of the known offenders of those murders are African American. So when police officers go on patrol, a number of things happen. First of all, we put more police officers in those distressed communities, communities with the highest levels of crime. Those interactions are therefore happening more frequently. And at the end of the day, we don't profile races, we profile criminals. And one of the things that, I'm sorry if it's going to be controversial, but I need to put it on the table. One of the things that's happening in this country, and it's a train. You're either on it or you're under it. And if you take the example of the issue of stop, question, and frisk. Stop, question, and frisk is based upon a 1968 case of Terry versus Ohio. They're called Terry stops. Police officers are allowed, by the Supreme Court's decision, to stop people based upon articulable, reasonable suspicion. That's what the Supreme Court found.
But you said this is going to be controversial. What will be controversial? You hate to say what?
What I'm going to tell you is the fact that...
By the way, you could say anything in this. That's why we're here.
And I don't mind.
You don't have to get a caveat, but go ahead.
I think you got the right guy, Don.
What's controversial? Go ahead.
What's controversial is the fact that this is now becoming the standard that's being used by the ACLU and the Department of Justice. Population demographics, not articulable, reasonable suspicion. Now, what feeds articulable, reasonable suspicion? I presume everybody in this room has heard of CompStat, right? Yeah. CompStat stands for Computer Statistics. Bill Bratton created it with Jack Maple here in New York City in 1994. We identify where crime happens, when crime happens, and we go after it.
Superintendent, just for the sake of time, not to cut you off, but you're saying stop, question, and frisk, in your estimation, should be a legal use for police officers. Is that
Absolutely,
what you're saying?
It has to be.
Which has been deemed profiling here in New York City, and it was stopped.
But it's fed by crime data. And here's my point. When we did our analysis in Chicago, we found that our stops almost exactly match percentage identification of offenders by civilians. In other words, you get robbed, you tell us who robbed us, who robbed you, that's who we're stopping.
Okay, I want to ask, what do you guys think of stop, question, and frisk? Do you think it should be legal here in New York City?
It is.
But do you think it should be used? Do you think it should be used?
Based on behaviors. It can't be about profile of a particular person. It always has to be on behaviors. And that's what I think the superintendent's talking about, is it's not just randomly stopping people of a certain race. You have to have specific and articulable facts to believe that there's criminal activity afoot, as they say. That's the legal standard. And it's got to be observable behaviors. That's what specific and articulable means.
But Don,
go ahead, Mark O'Mara, go ahead.
The problem is this. If we could answer the question that was truly posed, we would have gotten 80% of the solution. The idea is suggested by any police officer that there are not subtle biases about the way they deal with different demographics in this country is simply untrue. We know it's not true because the statistics prove it to be true. There's no question that when most cops enter into a situation, they treat the person they're dealing with differently based upon the color of their skin. We can make believe that we're not going to say that because it's not politically correct. But if we're truly here to talk about what really is the problem, and I'm not some apologist about it, the reality is, because I've done it for 30 years, the reality is we are definitely dealing with it, and cops react differently to the people who they react with. So you can say that stop and frisk and talk is okay as long as it's based upon behavioral statistics. But it's who you're looking at to determine that behavior is suspect. That's what we got to get past. And the reality is, within that question, what we have to acknowledge is that for whatever reason, 50 years, 100 years, your gene pool, whatever it might be that you say, cops do come to that situation looking at blacks differently.
There's a gentleman over here who is right here. If we have a microphone, can we get right here, this gentleman? Can we give him a microphone on the end? What you said, why do you want to talk? Why do you want to answer this?
Hey, Don. So first and foremost, Demetri Roberts, former Chicago police officer, but before I was a police officer, I was a young black man on the south side of Chicago who was racially profiled, but who was also beat up by the police. And it was only because community members put their arms around me and said, turn your hate, turn your frustration into something positive, that led me to the military, but then, as Superintendent McCarthy knows, brought me back to that same neighborhood as a Chicago police officer.
So why are you so passionate about stop, question, and frisk? Do you believe in it? Do you think it's wrong?
About profiling, because I was profiled. But then, as a law enforcement officer, I had to do some profiling to protect the citizens that I swore that I would do.
Did you profile black men?
I profiled all people. And here's why. Because it's an effective policing tool. But me having an appreciation and an understanding, having been on the negative side of profiling, I understand the negative connotations that it can bring. But I also understood how effective it can be to protect those members of the community.
So
that
it should be used. It should be you think it's an important part of policing and should be used.
It absolutely. But let me underscore the real point here. There's cultural differences here. There's community cultural differences and their police cultural differences. And where we have a real opportunity here, Don, is to bridge that divide between the cultural differences. Because when you take a police officer out of the police academy and you give him some diversity, immersion, and effective training about the community that he is going to police in, he's going to handle those citizens much differently. And he will profile, but he will profile in the correct way because he has an appreciation for that community.
All right, Charles Blow, I want you, go ahead. If you want to applaud, you can.
That you have to violate.
Go ahead, Charles Blow from the New York Times. Go ahead, Charles.
Let me just say this unequivocally. The way the stop and frisk was practiced here in New York City was abominable and ultimately immoral and unconstitutional. There is no way around that. At the height of stop and frisk in New York City, they were stopping and frisking more young black and brown men than there were young black and brown men in this city. That meant that somebody was getting more than one stop. That meant that if my two sons got no stops, somebody took a stop or two or three for them. And do not let anyone kind of convince you that this was some polite, officer-friendly encounter. I heard one of the people who was one of the complainants in the case give his account of being stopped and frisked. Number one, something like 90% of the people who were stopped and frisked here in New York City were never charged with a single thing. That meant that they had done nothing wrong, they could find nothing on them, and they let them go. This young man had this happen to him. I think his number was 9 times. In the New York Times, we had one guy who was up in like near 100. It was like 80-something, 90-something times, one person. But this guy who had been stopped 9 times, and he described, he was taking care of his younger brothers. He would describe going out to a store at night, you know how kids, they need milk, whatever the case, he'd go out to get it. He'd encounter the police officer. It wasn't stop, question. It was on the ground, running your hands into every part of my body. It was as close as he could describe to a sexual violation as he could describe.
Humiliating.
And at the end of that violation, there was no, we're sorry, go on about your business. It was simply walking away, leaving him there to get up on his own. And what we have to ask ourselves as a society is what psychic damage does something like that do to a whole generation of young men. And these are the young men who you need to have turn to police officers and not take their like retributions and things into their own hand. You want them to turn to the officers and say, we need you to help us. But those people will never turn to a person who has violated them in that way.
We're going to continue this conversation. I've got to get to a break. And as you were saying that, James Ramsey was just over here who asked the question saying absolutely. So listen, this gentleman standing here to my right, we're going to talk to him when we come back. He saved lives in Dallas. And this is the doctor, Dr. Brian Williams, that we've heard so much about. He feels both sides of this story. His story, more questions, more answers when we come right back. We're back now. We've been having very difficult conversations, but very important conversations with our town hall, Black, White, and Blue America 2016. I want to tell you that President Barack Obama holding a 4-hour meeting on police and community relations at the White House just today. Law enforcement officials, political and spiritual leaders, and activists all taking part in this. The president says he is encouraged by the conversation, but there is a lot of work to do to make sure communities feel that they're being treated fairly and police departments feel that they have the public's support. So right back to our discussions now, and the gentleman to my right, who is a surgeon from Parkland Hospital in Dallas, where some of the police officers were taking in Thursday's shooting. We're so happy that you could join us. Thank you so much for, yes, absolutely. Doctor, you have a question for our panel.
Yes, I should also mention that I'm an associate professor of surgery at UT Southwestern Medical Center in Dallas, and I strive to teach my daughter to appreciate and respect law enforcement. Yet personally, I do have this basal level of distrust, and I've had some instances in my life where I've actually had some degree of fear. So I'd like to know how we actually get past this.
Monifa?
Yeah, one of the things that I think a lot of times is missing from the conversation about solution is accountability, right? I think that we all at times in our lives can be victimized by various institutions in our community. But what's happening when we encounter abuse by the police is that there's not an element of accountability. You feel that nothing will come to your rescue. There'll be no resolve if something happens to you at the hands of the police. Because time and time again, district attorneys, state attorneys, even the Department of Justice has kind of failed to bring, for the most part, abusive police to justice. And so that fear is very different than, let's say, the fear of a neighbor or someone else randomly doing something to you where you know you have recourse. You can go somewhere. You can seek justice somewhere. And so that's the frustration and that's the fear. That's the isolation that you feel. And I think that all of the discussions about solutions, I think the First Lady definitely hit the nail on the head. But first, we've got to deal with the issue of accountability. Because we could put all the training in place, we could put all the cultural competency in place, but if I'm not going to be held accountable to that training, then it'll be all for naught. Yeah. And so I think that that's part of where you get to start to feel comfortable, is if your life matters and if you can get justice if you are having an abusive relationship with a police officer.
So what is the fear? How can you make that go away? What is the fear?
Well, I've had this for a long time, and I will say I've never been physically abused by police. I've never been verbally abused by police, but in the few interactions I've had, I have felt that the way I was treated was beyond what was necessary for that particular situation.
And Neil Franklin, that goes along with the stats that we were showing from especially that New York Times stat that was taken, or poll that was taken, that showed that most times people of color will be knocked to the ground, they'll be frisked, they'll be abused by police officers, more so than any other race.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the more opportunities there are for police to interact with people, the more opportunities for something to go wrong. And that's a lot of what we're seeing. So, Chief Brown started down this road of what we at LEAP have been saying for a very long time. We need to look at our policies. The policies that our lawmakers are putting in place. What are we requiring our police to do? And the biggest example of this gone wrong is the war on drugs. And you can't have a war on drugs, and I hate that term war, but you can't have a war on drugs. You can only have a war on people And the way it's manifested itself here, it ended up being mainly a war on black and brown people. And for things of, mere possession of drugs where people may have a substance abuse issue, let me put it this way. We're attempting to solve a public health crisis with criminal justice solutions. And the tip of the spear is our police officers.
I have a lot of uh-huhs in the audience.
Well, of course
you guys,
they know,
you
especially,
guys, why do you
especially
agree
the
with
black
that?
folks out there like me, because this is what we're experiencing
walk over here.
in
Go
our
ahead.
communities.
Thank you, Doctor.
I'm from Baltimore. There never would have been a Freddie Gray, as one of many examples. There never would have been a Freddie Gray if it weren't for these drug policies. Someone who had been arrested over and over and over and over again for possession of drugs.
Why are you in agreement with this? What are you shaking your head for?
Well, like you said, you take people that have a health issue and you make it a criminal issue. And here's something that a lot of people don't talk about. When the young black kid gets caught with crack cocaine or weed, he goes to jail. But when the white kid gets caught with meth, he goes to rehab. So nobody really discusses that. And, I think another thing that we have to discuss when this young man right here, this officer here, he talks about it almost like a matter of fact, like we're making up this issue. I'm so glad she said accountability, because one of the bridges, one of the things that will bridge the gap between blacks, whites, and police is acknowledgement. It's acknowledgement. I can't cheat on my girlfriend and make her feel like it's her fault. I was the one that violated her. And so it's stop and frisk with the disparity as it relates to black people going to jail for minor crimes. It has to be some form of acknowledgement. And once it's acknowledged, then we can start the healing process.
By the way, this is Corey Hughes. Corey's one of the organizers of the Dallas March, by the way, that, where sadly the officers were killed. Go ahead,
and I just
Monifa.
want to say that an analogy about a relationship is very interesting, because as the various police officers were saying, yes, we profile, yes, we have to do this, but it's for community safety. It sounds a lot like I have to hurt you because I love you.
Absolutely.
And that's entirely pathological,
Hold on,
because to say that we can't find a way to make communities safe without violating people, without humiliating young children, like Charles mentioned, no one can trust that process.
Okay, I want to ask the audience this, because there are people who believe that it's only a perception. The fear is it's not real. That African Americans, black people, it's just a perception that they are in danger from police. How many people believe that it is a real fear? That it actually happens. That it actually happens. How many people feel that black people are just feeling this, that it's a perception? Anybody in this room feel that it's just okay?
Let me just add one more thing to this.
Let Gary, go ahead. I want Gary to weigh in on this.
This is a well-founded fear based upon the history of African Americans in this country. Let's get it out in the open.
But you can't just say the history of African Americans. You got to take responsibility and say the history of the action of police in America.
Which is what I was saying. Because what I was going to point out is that the history of African Americans in this country started with slavery. Then it moved to black codes, to segregation. And who was it who was enforcing those racist policies? It was the white police officer. So that narrative exists in the community based on the history, and it's factual. And then what happens? We have bad incidents, we build on it, and we worsen that perception. And that's on us.
Let me add to this idea about, it's not just a historical thing. This is a present condition. And it is very...
Hold on. But everyone, don't overlook. Hold on, Charles.
Let me finish this point.
We shouldn't overlook that he just took some responsibility. Hang on, Charles. I'll let you get your point in. He just took some responsibility for what most people in this room and many people in the country feel is the problem, that police officers are not taking responsibility. Should we not give him some credit for that? Yes, we should, because that's what this forum is all about. Charles, I'll let you get it. Hold on, go quickly.
That's the first step to healing. When you take responsibility for your behavior, it's the first step to healing. One of the things that really assaults the very fabric of our Constitution is that you've got 40 million African Americans, from physicians to hip-hop artists to preachers, saying the same thing. And yet this is a narrative that some groups of Americans refuse to believe. And that's a tragedy. If we were believed, and women went through the same thing. Rape victims go through the same thing. It is so difficult to get those who have power to believe that this is legitimate. African Americans are not monolithic. We don't agree about anything else, but we all agree about this. Give us some credit for this.
Yeah.
These are groups that we wouldn't agree about anything, but when it comes to this situation, from a physician to a clergyman to a hip hop artist, it's not like we had a big meeting for African Americans and 40 million people said, we're going to come up with a story. The fact that it is not believed is perhaps more assaulting
And
than
insulting.
the issue itself.
But you said not insulting, assaulting.
Assaulting. It assaults you when you come forward and you are never believed.
Yeah.
And it reminds me very much of sexual abuse victims. And we've had a history of that in this country. And one of the things, having counseled many of them, one of the things that is most damaging to a sexual abuse victim is not just the sexual abuse, it is the fact that I told someone in power and they would not believe me. This generation of African Americans are being assaulted in a way that we could fix if we could be heard and believed.
Charles Blow, go ahead.
Listen, I absolutely applaud anybody who takes personal responsibility. However, we keep pretending that this is an issue where police officers only must take responsibility rather than the wider society that put police in the position of having to make this many contacts with people in the first place. Right. The idea that the police are simply an articulation of society's desires to control bodies and to restrict problems to particular geographies is what is producing most of this problem. If the same issues that are happening in poor black and brown neighborhoods were to spill over into the comfortable classes, into their neighborhoods, you would see an automatic, immediate addressing of these issues. But because we allow our police departments, or force them even, I mean, some of this is not even their fault, force them to treat these communities as ATM machines. Instead of cutting services in some cases, which some people would love, or raising taxes, which other people would love, and taking care of young people, and like as Frederick Douglass once said, it is easier to raise a strong child than it is to fix a broken man. But we won't do that. What we will do is let that child be broken and then force our police officers, flood them into the neighborhoods where we've allowed them to be broken in the first place and increase those interactions, make them write an atrocious number of tickets, put them into criminal justice systems that exact even more money for them, and that fills our budget shortfalls. We have turned, as Mother Jones once put it, we have turned whole police departments from protect and serve to punish and profit.
Okay.
And that is all of society's
All right.
problem.
I'm going to hang on. I'm going to stand right here. So if you're in this audience, if you feel that, if you have a question concerning this, do you think that, are you happy that he took responsibility at least? Is this where we start? Is this where we start? And much further to go, right? How many of you, you're all aware of Black Lives Matter, right? Are you all aware of what the former mayor of New York City said about Black Lives Matter? Yes. He said that Black Lives Matter was an inherent racist group. Right. So we're going to talk about that and much more, many more questions when we come right back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone, to our live CNN Tonight Town Hall event. It's Black, White, and Blue America 2016. I'm Don Lemon. Tonight in the studio, we have brought together police, we've brought together community members, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, Black, White, and of course, Blue. Everybody here to talk honestly about police, civilians, and civilians alike in the line of fire. I want to start off, I said before the break that we were going to talk about Black Lives Matter. So right here with me now is Darnell Moore. He is a senior editor at Mike and an organizer of Black Lives Matter. First of all, welcome. What's your question?
Thank you for having the conversation. So Rudy Giuliani recently made the assertion that Black Lives Matter movement, a movement that is grounded in notions of respect, dignity, justice, and sanctity of life, sanctity of Black life. He noted that this was inherently racist. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Gary McCarthy, what do you think, Black Lives Matter? Do you agree with the former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani?
Well, I could tell you this. I think if there was a movement called White Lives Matter, it would be considered racist. So I think that all lives matter. I spent 35 years. As a matter of fact, today is my 35th anniversary as a police officer, starting here in New York City. And for 35 years, I've been trying to reduce crime and stop murders. And it didn't matter if they were black, white, green, or purple. So I'm a believer that we got to get by The difference is we got to have an honest conversation, which I hope this is going to open up to be. And at the end of the day, we have to have exposure to each other, and we have to sit down and really rip at this thing and get after it.
Just applause. People who believe that that Black Lives Matter is racist and offensive. If you believe there was a White Lives Matter, would it be considered racist? Applause. You think it would be considered racist?
Upon the data. There's no reason for them. They don't need a White Lives Matter because it's already understood that White Lives Matter.
The data says that the police shot more white people.
Hold on one second. So I'm going to use a very simple analogy. If you and I went to the store and both of us ordered hamburgers, and they gave you yours, and they gave Bishop Jakes his, and I didn't get mine, is it discrimination? Is it racist because I say, where is my burger? But then you turn around and you say, all burgers matter. Well, I'm glad you have yours. But what about mine?
Okay, go ahead, Gary.
I'm sorry, Don, but the data that you put up showed that the police have shot more white people this year than they have black folks. Now, by the way, I'm not dismissing the issue. In no way, shape, or form am I doing it. I'm merely presenting an alternative thought. That's all.
But listen, hang on, everybody. He thinks that you are dismissing his issue by saying that. Are you listening? Do you hear
Absolutely,
what he's saying?
I'm listening.
Do you hear him?
Absolutely, I'm listening.
I want to comment on what the former mayor said about Black Lives Matter.
Hang on, Monifa. Go ahead.
Sure. I'm Councilman Rory Lanceman, New York City Councilman. I chair the Committee on Courts and Legal Services. And yeah, of course, all lives matter. But as a white guy, I've never felt that my life didn't matter. I've never been pulled over for driving while white. I've never been subject to a stop and frisk. And I don't understand why it's so hard for white people to not appreciate the fact that people of color have a different experience with law enforcement in this country. And so when folks say that Black lives matter, they're not saying that white lives don't. What they're saying is they want their lives to matter as much as mine does.
Yeah. So listen, I want to play this. Cedric, I'm going to come to you, but before I come to you, I want to play this. This was the current Speaker of the House last night in this very studio when he was asked about Black Lives Matter, and a questioner, I thought, put it very succinctly to him. Listen.
You're saying Black Lives Matter because people feel like they're being discriminated against and they're not safe because of the color of their skin. So that's profound. And because people believe that, we have to listen to that and we have to hear about it, we have to understand it, and then instead of just talking, let's go try solving it.
Well, we appreciate you listening. So when you hear Black Lives Matter, it's a reminder. Just keep listening to the message. Thanks.
Originally, he said that he thought that it was divisive. It was divisive, and he didn't think that that term should be used. Cedric, what do you say?
Well, let me start by saying this. This whole social construct in this country is wrong, period. That's part of the problem. I mean, historically, it has a context to it, but like you heard Charles say earlier, when you think about it in the present, there are just so many things wrong. So Rudy Giuliani was irresponsible to state that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group. Those are young American men and women who had, for their reason, in their space, in their time, had a reason to respond to what they saw was a social injustice.
He said it's racist.
That goes back, no, they're not racist. That goes back to Trayvon Martin, to Brown, and up to this day. And what has happened, if you look back over this country, there have been other groups that, as a result of social questions, particularly around communities of color, have developed a number of different groups that have come along, i.e. Black Panther Party, whether you like them or not. I mean, a host of other groups, SNCC, SCLC, you name them. But we still live in a country that is divided by race, and we don't want to acknowledge it. But here's what we do have to acknowledge, is that there's so many things that are so convoluted, so complicated, and now we're at this place in American history that involves policing and community, which has been bumping heads for years, but we've seen great progress, though, Don. But to Gary's point, and I understand what Gary's saying as a police chief, I understand what he's saying when you're asking me to come into some of the most challenged communities in America, whether it's in New York City or DeKalb County, Georgia. You're asking me to come into those communities, get the crime out. We go in, And there's nothing wrong with stop and frisk. The problem is exactly what Charles was saying. It is that Terry stop is not wrong. It's the utilization of it and how we do it. Because if you don't do it professionally, you don't do it in the way in which the Supreme Court sanctioned that it should be done, then there's a problem. But many times, oftentimes, in many communities that are challenged by crime, we have police officers, black and white, by the way, that will go into these communities and take it upon themselves to enforce laws that are going way out of bounds. And then we're stuck with it, and we're stuck in this place we are.
I want to get back to, thank you very much for that. I want to get back to our audience questions now. This is Carcina Dozier. She is a Director of Community Relations in New York City Department of Homeless Services. What's your question, Carcina?
Great, thank you. So I want to preface this question by saying that I'm asking it as a proud public servant of a very vulnerable population, as a loving sister and daughter of law enforcement officers, and also as a concerned citizen in this country who has witnessed up close and personal members of my race being mistreated and humiliated via racial profiling. And so my question for you all is, how can we say that the majority of police officers in this country are not racist or have an implicit bias against African Americans, when every African American in this country has either experienced racial profiling or know someone who has experienced racial profiling? So how can we then say that there's only a small segment of police officers that are engaging in this practice?
Okay, I want that. Tom Jackson is here. And Tom Jackson, first let me introduce you because you may find him familiar. The former police chief of Ferguson, Missouri. He was there during the whole Michael Brown, Officer Darren Wilson thing. A federal Justice Department investigation found that your police department routinely stereotyped, discriminated against African American residents, not just your department. According to a CNN and Kaiser Family Foundation poll, 1 in 5 black Americans, to her point, felt that they had been treated unfairly by police in just the last month, okay? 1 in 30 white Americans, 1 in 30, as opposed to 1 in 5 white Americans felt that they had been mistreated by police in the last month. So, if this is this a few bad cops, or is this a systemic problem?
Well, first of all, I know what it's like to be called a racist, because that's the narrative that came of me after a 35-year career of proud law enforcement. But the fact is that I heard about the talk during the Ferguson thing, and it was the first time I'd heard that. And when it was brought to my attention during a town hall in Ferguson, I was saddened by that. I couldn't imagine they have to talk to my kids and tell them that. But also, I can tell you that police officers do not go out and routinely say, I want to have a confrontation with anybody. They go out to do a job, to serve and protect. And the ones that I have worked with for the past 35, 36 years are proud of what they do. They believe in what they do, and they do it for the right reasons. And I think
is this something that's ingrained? And I don't think people consciously, I think people, agree with you consciously that police officers are doing this. But is this something that's ingrained in society? Is it ingrained in the training? Are those perceptions, do they come from the police academy or just being on the force?
I don't think it's ingrained at all. What I think we have is it was brought to the fore a little while ago, and it's what Chief Brown from Dallas said, is that too much is being put on police officers. Too much of society's ails. One of the big problems we had in Ferguson is concentrated poverty, which I think is at the root of the problem. We're taking poor people and concentrating them in small areas with HUD programs that are well-intentioned and well-meaning, but are unregulated. So we have the responsibility goes to the police. So we have elevated crime, broken down families, lack of education, lack of jobs, lack of hope. And
so you're saying police, it's more than just keeping the peace now. As the chief in Dallas said, it's a number of too many. Police have to wear too many hats, and it's not fair.
Absolutely.
But the issue though is one of abuse and brutality and excessive force. And that's where the specifics are. I know that police have a lot of hats, but part of that is just being a police officer.
Right. Well, no officer should use excessive force, and when they do, they should be held accountable, just like everybody else. But I think we need to be unequivocal in our support of law enforcement as a profession. You know, we don't equivocate when we say we support our military, except the bad ones. The bad ones should be held to account, but we need to be unequivocal in saying that we as a country support law enforcement, and we need to redefine the role of law enforcement so that it's more effective and so there's less confrontation between the police and the community.
I'm so glad that you're here. And you recently, you for a long time after Michael Brown, you didn't say anything. You sort of, I don't know if you went into hiding.
I did.
But you didn't, this is one of your first times actually speaking. You thought this was important enough to be here. Why are you here?
The last week, I saw those 2 officer-involved shootings, and then I saw the vitriol and the hatred and everything come out from the whole community, and it brought me back to Ferguson when I saw, you know, these lines of hundreds and sometimes thousands of people just shouting death threats at the officers that were out there on the line every single night for months.
Yeah.
And it just brought it all back.
I want to play something for the audience, and this is from Tim Scott, who is a Republican. It happened today. It was a very moving moment on the floor in Washington. Listen to this.
I want to go to a time in my life when I was an elected official and share just a couple of stories as an elected official. But please remember that in the course of 1 year, I've been stopped 7 times by law enforcement officers. Not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7 times in 1 year as an elected official. Was I speeding sometimes? Sure. But the vast majority of the time, I was pulled over for nothing more than driving a new car in the wrong neighborhood or some other reason just as trivial.
I want to go to Mark O'Mara. It's something you may not know about Mark O'Mara, right? Mark O'Mara, I mean, you know that he defended George Zimmerman, but you spent most of your career defending young black men or just black people in communities from excessive force, from issues like this, and that one thing, George Zimmerman, that you're known for. Is there any doubt in your mind, Mark O'Mara, that African Americans are treated differently than white people
Not at all.
in the justice system?
No, and that's the easy answer, but that's the obvious one. And to take issue with law enforcement, I love cops, I defend cops. There is no question that when you look at the criminal justice system and use any filter you want, that it is biased against the African American community. That's not the problem. The failure to acknowledge it is the problem. Because look, you see, because now we're at a point in 2016 where we are looking at cops. Some parts of this community are looking at cops as the enemy. Horribly dangerous for the rest of us. I don't mean for the whites, I mean for the rest of society, if we can't trust our cops. They work for us, we employ them. If I gave one of my associates triple, quadruple the amount of work to do, they could not do their job. That's what is being said here so far today, that we're making cops do so much more than they can do, and then we pay them poorly. We train them fairly, but then we never give them additional training. We put them in one of the most stressful jobs that we give, and then we hold them to an unbelievably high standard. I'm a big guy in favor of body cameras, but let me tell you something. When we start seeing a lot more body cameras, we're going to see a lot more stuff we don't like, and we've got to understand that being a cop is a dirty job sometimes. Doesn't allow you to be racist, does not allow you to racially profile, but we have to give them their due. We got to pay them better, we got to train them better, we got to make sure we don't have cowboys as cops. So our cadets have to be good. Then, and only then, are we really going to get to, because we can talk all we want here, but if we actually get to the point that we have to acknowledge the subtle biases, and that the only way we're going to do it is to actually put it out into the front and deal with it, that's when we're going to start making progress.
More questions from our audience when we come. More questions from our audience when we come right back.
Okay.
We'll be right back. You know, for many of us, this isn't just a story. It is personal. It's our lives, as a matter of fact. Travis Satterwhite is a member of the CNN family. He's a news editor at the CNN Political Desk, and he is here with a question. Hey, Travis.
Thank you, Don. Thanks for having me. My question is, I am a young professional black male. I do everything right, and I have a bright future ahead of me. But I'm terrified when I'm stopped by the police. What can I do? Even though I'm complying with the officer, what can I do to ensure my safety and that I will go home to my loved ones at the end of that traffic stop?
Gary?
Well, first of all, I'm terrified when I get stopped by the police. And I'm not joking. I've had my own incidents with police officers. So the first thing that you said is correct. My advice is comply. My advice is also to be respectful. Hopefully the officer is doing the same thing. Keep your hands where you can see them and have the conversation that way. That's my recommendation. Because once an officer approaches a traffic stop, once the tactical fear of something bad happening, because it does happen to officers all the time, once that fear comes down, once the conversation can start, everybody comes down and you can have a good conversation.
Do you believe that, Monifa?
No, we absolutely have to. You have to join the movement to change policing in this country. That's how you're going to be safe. Telling you and instructing our young people day in and day out that there's something in their behavior that brings on the abuse is tantamount to telling women that there's something that we do that causes street harassment and rape. We have to change the culture. I want you to be safe. But I want you to be safe whether or not you're professional. I want you to be safe if you're a homeless brother. I want you to be safe if English is your second language. I want you to be safe if you have mental health issues. All of them should be safe. Every aspect of you should be safe. Not everyone should have to pretend like a certain type of person.
Mark.
And so join the movement.
Mark, you don't agree with that?
No, I don't agree because it's a great grand principle to throw out there to say we should all get along and we should all kumbaya. And we should. We should not have a racial divide in this country anymore, but we do.
We do.
So I say to him, you do put your hands on the wheel. You do be careful. And maybe you do still have to be extra careful because you're black. But the refusal to do that, the refusal to acknowledge that we still live within a racially divided country doesn't help avoid it. Because I think it's going to presuppose it to continue. Because if he sits back and says, no, I'm going to join the movement and I'm not going to do what would otherwise keep me safe objectively, we haven't really helped.
But
we just haven't.
You have what we're saying is you have to do both. You can be you, but I was just pointing out that not everyone can be you. Not everyone's going to be able to present themselves as this professional.
But
Neil Franklin.
And they should be
Neil
as
Franklin.
safe.
Unfortunately, we have to teach our black sons and daughters. Remember Sandra Bland? And I believe today might be the anniversary of that. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to do both.
It is the anniversary of her death. Yeah.
And my condolences to her family. You have to put your hands on the steering wheel. You have to be calm. You have to develop a dialogue to bring things down. Unfortunately, you have to do that when it should be the responsibility of the police officer, peace officer, to bring calm to every situation.
Okay, so there were people in this room when you guys were saying that. People were saying, no, you should not have to do that. But if this is about give and take from both sides,
you have to commit.
What, do you guys agree? Do you guys agree that you should do that? You should put your hands, or no, you shouldn't have to do that?
Yes, but she wasn't saying maybe you do have to do that. But let me just say, can we just take a moment as America and register how profound and immoral it is that we should have to give a certain group in this country a toolbox to survive what should otherwise be an innocent interaction. Can we just take a moment and understand, Margaret, you were kind of marching over this fact, yes, you're going to have to do that, but stay safe. The idea that black and brown parents should have to do this violence to their own children, to say, this is the only thing that will keep you safe, is that if you pack this toolbox and you take it with you everywhere you go, and this is not the way that everybody has to behave. It is only the way that you have to behave. And it is not your fault, and you have not done anything wrong. But it is because you are who you are, and they do not see you as the person that I love, but they see you as a person that they should fear.
Charles, let me jump in here, because over the past couple of days I've said similar things, that you shouldn't have to do that. But white parents, do we have white parents in the audience? There are white parents who have contacted me and said they do the same thing with they teach their kids to be respectful of police officers too, to put their hands on the wheel and to do whatever. A civil rights attorney, Frederick Lawrence, is here. Do white parents do that as well?
Well, white parents do that as well, but I think it's a very different experience. I mean, I think with my children, I always taught them, don't sass a cop. I was taught by my dad, don't sass a cop. But I assumed if I don't sass a cop, the likelihood of that interaction turning bad is zero. And that's a different experience, I think, for
You,
white
what was
parents.
you had a question?
Well, my question, I'm thinking back to the beginning of this town hall, which was such a compelling moment of seeking common ground. And I'm trying to think of ways in which we can pierce through some of this and seek some common ground. So what I wanted to ask was, what responsibility should leadership on all sides feel when there are extreme cases by a few? And I'm not saying only the problems are of a few, but when cases of police brutality do happen, what is the responsibility of police unions and police departments to acknowledge that? And when a tragedy like Dallas happens, what is the responsibility of social activists to take responsibility and to make statements? And is that a place we can begin to have some common ground on these problems?
And to that point, and that's a great question, because the first place is to acknowledge. I'm a police administrator. We have had our own issues in our own county, but one thing we take responsibility for is that we let the public know, here's what happened. Here's what we know to this point. And we know there's going to be subsequent investigation. But I think oftentimes what happened is that certain events will happen. We won't acknowledge them. We won't talk about them. We won't share with the community what we know up to this point. Now, I want to go back to Charles Blow point for just a moment. And he's absolutely right. As a police administrator, I've been in this profession for 40 years, Don. And I'm going to tell you something. No one, no population should have to do anything any different than any other population. Now, that being said, if we're going to teach people how to conduct themselves, if they're pulled over in a traffic stop, then we should teach it to every American in this country. Everyone. No one should have to do anything special. I don't train my men and women that way. I don't know anyone in the state of Georgia that trains their people that way, because you have to treat people with the same respect you would like to be treated. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. I had a very heated crowd of people last night in DeKalb County who wanted to come out and talk about the issues that were going on. Angry people, sad people, hurt people. And woman asked a very important question. She said, I'm being told, I tell my children to comply. And it appears that when they comply, they still get hurt by the police. So what do I tell them? I will tell you this, and I'll tell the rest of the country this, and those who are listening. Continue to comply. There's no option to that. We still must comply to the authority. And if something goes awry, they're disrespectful, that's not something you deal with on the street. You get that name, you get that badge number. But the point of it is, there's so much distrust right now in this country between police and community. And the starting point and the jumping off point from all of us, Don, is going to have to be, is that we're going to have to find a place. Because we can talk about this all night, we can talk about it tomorrow, next week, but until we begin to talk about how do we start to trust and legitimize each other, maybe for the first time ever, in some communities, I think relationships are greater, and others more challenged, but we can't continue down this road that we're on now.
Thank you very much for your important question.
But
before you get to that,
accountability is different from taking responsibility.
I've got to get over here because her important.
And that's what's left out of the conversation. To acknowledge the abuse is one thing, but how are you making people whole? What justice is there for the people that have been abused? And I want to get to that part of the conversation, because it's one thing to say, yeah, you've been abused by me, or this system has been abused by my institution. But what's going to be the process to making people whole?
But part of the I think the solution is a good one, and that's suggested the other day. Should this be taught in driver's ed? Should it be something that you teach people when you're teaching people to drive, how you deal with police officers, so that it's across the board, everyone is taught that? No? Does it make a difference at all, Neil?
Look, we've got two things here, and we're talking about short-term solutions, or at least we're trying to solve symptoms of a much larger problem. At the beginning of the discussion tonight, you asked a question. It was asked about the fear of black men in this country. This is something that's never been resolved, or it's been perpetuated since slavery. And we have to deal with that. Yes, we have to go back and talk about that. So since slavery until now, there's always been a tool, there's always been a method, there's always been a policy to vilify the black man. And we're talking, and it's manifesting itself now in what we see every day in policing because it's right in front of you.
So then what's the solution?
But let me
then?
ask, wait a minute, this is a societal problem how we view the black man. And I'm gonna tell you something right now. Most of black people also fear the young black man because subconsciously this is what has been fed to us over the years. Now, you want to sit there and acknowledge that you don't have some sort of fear before you catch yourself, and realize that, whoa, wait a minute, I shouldn't be thinking this way. When you see a group of our young black men standing on a corner, sagging and doing what they do. But the key is to understand and to recognize that we all have our individual bias, and to recognize it and then to control it and not act upon it in a negative way.
Here's the difference that I got a text from a friend tonight who happens to be black. And he says, Don, yeah, people are racist. And he said, and people have biases. And even blacks have biases against other blacks. As you say, they fear other blacks. But the difference is that we give them a chance. We give people a chance. Even though we may fear them, we still give them more of a chance than a white person may give them.
And does the system back up that bias, right? It's one thing if I'm biased towards you, but I'm not allowed to be. We gave a moment of silence for Sandra Bland, but we haven't had a moment of justice for Sandra Bland.
Thank you.
And so that's the piece that's missing.
Sheree Santoris, who we're speaking about young black men and fearing them. You're here with your 14-year-old son. She's a hairstylist. You can see her beautiful hair here. But she's here with her young black son, and you have a question about fear, right? About fearing young kids.
You know, my question goes deeper than fearing young black children. My son is 14 years old. He's 5'7". He has cornrows. He likes to sag his pants no matter how much I tell him to put a belt on and pull him up. So my question to you is, if I'm constantly teaching him to be responsible, to be accountable for his actions, and you can ask anyone who speaks to him, he is extremely respectful to any and everyone. It's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. It's yes, sir, no, sir, and I won't have anything less. So if I'm teaching him to do this, and he's yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, but in the back of my mind, I know that it's not gonna matter. Every moment he's not with me, I fear for his life. My question is, I keep telling my son what he should do. I keep hearing you tell me to tell my son what to do. My 14-year-old is sitting right there. So you tell him he needs to be more respectful. You tell him he needs to be more compliant to your rules and your laws. Because I've told him, and obviously it doesn't matter because you're telling me I'm not telling him enough.
Yeah. Cedric?
Here's what I would say, and all of us in this room and people across this country understand exactly what you're saying, because young black men and women of color, young people, period, regardless who they are, have been told what you need to do, and somehow it don't feel like it works. But here's what I will say. We in law enforcement have work to do. We got to change some things as well, too. We got to train better. We got to recruit better. We got to provide culture, diversity, and sensitivity training. But you know what? Let's put culture, diversity, and sensitivity training aside for a moment. I want to recruit you from the onset. You already come sensitized and culturally aware of differences. We need to recruit from there so that when your son or Gary's child or any of our sons or daughters come in contact with the police, there's a shared responsibility in that interaction. And all that interaction is not placed upon your 14-year-old son, but it's also placed upon that professional law enforcement officer. There are a lot of things across this country that are being done at this very moment. 21st Century Task Force report, 59 recommendations that have been forwarded from the president out into this community have been implemented in a number of police departments across this country that will address exactly what you're talking about. But there are many departments that are adopting it, and there are those that are staying away from it. But here's what I will say. People like myself, my good friend Gary that I've known, and I know where his heart is in all of this, people like Charles Blow and Mark, We're in this fight to try to make a difference, and we all are taking some responsibility. Yeah, in law enforcement, criminal justice, we have a responsibility so that you don't have to feel fearful when your son goes out into the community or your daughter goes out into
I want Gary to respond. This mother's here shaking, you know, and you, quite honestly, as a white police officer, what do you say to her that will help? Do you feel what
I
she's
absolutely hear what she's saying. And there's not an answer to your question. I can't think of an answer to your question. The only thing I could think about is what I explained to you is exactly what I explained to this young man about a car stop is exactly how I act during a car stop. And I think back to my Marine Corps drill instructor dad, who raised me in a certain fashion, just like you're talking about the way that you're raising your son. And I don't know the answer to your question, but I want to support what Cedric just said, and I kind of want to almost make an offer, if I may. Everybody in this country now knows who David Brown is. David is a friend of mine. David, I was the vice president of the Major City Chiefs Association. It's the 67 biggest jurisdictions in the country. A lot of people in this room have been saying, you're not hearing this, you don't understand that. I don't think that's the case. I'm certainly listening. I'm certainly hearing it. I've been hearing it. And I could tell you that my former colleagues in the Major City Chiefs Association and IACP, institutions like PERF, Noble, there are institutions in law enforcement that should be sitting down with Black Lives Matter. And I'll try and facilitate that meeting if that's what needs to happen, because there has to be conversation. There has to be conversation, there has to be exposure, and I think that you would be shocked to hear the responses from some of these police executives. Yeah. David Brown is not the exception. David Brown is a great example of it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
But Don,
thank you very much. I got to get a break. I got to get a break in. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to our town hall. You said you wanted to say something to that mother.
Absolutely. And here's the deal, Don. As a police officer and as a leader
who served under Gary McCarthy, but who also served my country, I put my life on the line for my country, and I put my life on the line for my community. And I will not sit here as a leader who took an oath and let this young lady behind me cry because she and her family and her children don't feel protected when I swore an oath to serve and protect her. So I want to say I'm sorry. As a leader, she's right there. As a leader and as somebody who took that oath, I'm sorry that we have not fulfilled our civil duty and our responsibility to you and this community and your children. And I'm sorry. And I just want to take a moment and say to you, I'm sorry. And I think this is where Is that where the healing begins?
I think that's where it begins. I think it's so very, very important that not only do we hear what is being said, but we hear the cry of the heart. Mm-hmm. As a pastor, we conducted a funeral today for a police officer. We spend many more times conducting funerals for mothers like her. When I heard her cry, it brought tears to my eyes because I hear that we do 400 funerals a year. This needs to stop.
You said something to me in the break, though, about, you said you want me to talk more about economic opportunities.
Yes, because what this gentleman said over here, I almost leaped out of my seat, because we have allowed these communities to develop of hopelessness and despair with no jobs and no opportunities. We have a criminal justice system that needs to be overhauled. They get out of criminal justice system, they can't vote, they can't get a place to stay, they can't get a job, and then we start talking to them about moral responsibility. We have a lot of problems to fix beyond the police officers, and while there are issues with the police officers, our country as a whole needs to focus on poverty, job opportunities, rehabbing our cities. America can do better than it's doing right now. We need great leadership. We need hearts like what we just saw back there. Mm-hmm. And we need a change of these cesspools of decadence and despair that we call communities today. Mm-hmm. We need jobs. Yeah. We need families. Yeah. We need hope.
Thank you, Bishop, and thank you for being so open. Thank you. I appreciate that. Charles Blow, you talk about economic opportunity all the time.
Not only have we allowed, I think the word allowed is very interesting, because I don't think that history necessarily allows allowed to stand alone. America created, by design, what we call our American ghettos, and that was through urban policies. That was everything from redlining, that was mortgage policies, banking policies. That was the way we built our infrastructure, whether or not we cut straight through those communities, whether or not we built highways that cut them off from the rest of the cities, whether or not we built mass transportation that was easy for them to get into the centers of cities and get to jobs and away from jobs. We didn't simply allow neighborhoods to get bad. We created bad neighborhoods. And as the president said in the memorial service, and now we sit back and feign disbelief when those neighborhoods explode. America, all of America, has its hands deep in this dirt.
Thank you, Charles. I have another officer here with me, Colonel K.L. Williams. You're in Kinloch, Missouri, right?
Correct.
You have taught officers for 30 years on how to avoid bias policing and how to avoid using deadly force. What's your question?
Correct. Well, first, let me just say a couple quick things, because I've been sitting, I've been listening, and first of all, I'm just going to say police work is a very noble profession. Number one, what profession out there do people risk their lives to save folks they don't even know? That's the first thing I want to say. And second, we got to really begin to look at the base issues. See, there are officers out there who are willing to step up. You know, they have, when they talk about terrorism, they say, well, if you see something, say something. I say to my colleagues, if you see something, do something. Don't just stand there and watch. Don't just stand there and get involved. But see, what happens is when the officer does get involved, guess what? He gets transferred. He gets demoted. He faces some repercussions from his colleagues, and therefore that behavior does not change. See, we can deal with this problem tonight if we really wanted to step out there and do something constructive and positive. Because the officers out there on the street right now, as we're speaking, they're seeing something that's wrong. They're seeing something that they know should be changed, and they should step in and do something and not turning their back saying, I don't know what I saw. I didn't see anything. You got to be responsible. We talk about accountability. Yes, I teach a class called Racially and Culturally Biased Policing, and it focuses on accountability. But if the accountability stops and is not supported by the higher ups, if it stops and this officer feels, well, I'll never move anywhere in this department if I speak out, because you understand there's a code. When you graduate from that police academy, I guarantee that you are going to be indoctrinated into a philosophy that if you don't toe the line, you're going to have some problems. And that is the bottom line. Now, we can dance around it all you want, and somebody spoke on some other issues. If you think that racism and white supremacy is not involved in police departments, you better check yourself. Because the KKK has been involved in law enforcement from when it just about started. So you can look at the historical perspective, you can bring it back to today, but the bottom line is we have an obligation. I have had more guns pointed at my head as a young man before I became a police officer. I don't even know how I made it. And when you look up to a shotgun that's pointing at you, it changes you. I knew I could never change the condition from the outside. I had to go from the inside. But let me get to my question. I have traveled, I have spoken to police officers who have told me that they believe that black people are genetically predisposed to be criminals. Genetically predisposed. Let that sink in for a minute. And it is their obligation to control these people by whatever means are necessary.
All right, I want to bring in now criminal defense attorney. How do you, he's got a very good point. So how do you weed that out and deal with that?
Well, I think what we have to do is we need better vetting of police officers when they come into the system. There's also a perception, and it's real, that the police officers are an occupying force because very few of the police officers actually live in the communities in which they are to police. So we need better vetting. We need better recruitment and have police officers living in the neighborhoods in which they patrol. And we also need to have district attorneys and judges that do not rubber stamp the actions of police officers.
Is he right, though, when he says if you think that discrimination and racism is not involved in police departments, then you are out of your mind? You need to check yourself.
Racism is part of our society, so why wouldn't it not spill into police departments? Police officers believe that there's a culture of them against us. And the fact of the matter is, because we care about black lives, does that mean we're demonizing police officers? Yeah. And once we come to that understanding that we can have this conversation without saying that all police officers are bad, then we can make some ground and find common ground in which we can make some solutions.
Gary, go ahead.
I'm just listening and fascinated. I would hire you if I still had Chicago police.
Don, there comes a time when the car can no longer be repaired.
Yeah.
Okay? We need a new car. Yeah. Okay, let's stop trying. Look, the 21st century policing thing by the president, and some wonderful people sat on that panel, but we need a new policing model, period. This does not work. It never worked. It's time for us to do something new, to rebuild from the ground up. Police departments should be governed, controlled by their communities. We don't need a chief who runs the entire police department after being hired by the mayor. What we need is a board of citizens, yes, local politicians, business leaders, faith leaders in charge of the philosophy of the police department, governing that police department. And we need to do it under, I don't know if any of you have heard of the 9 basic principles of policing, the Peelian principles. We're now sending police officers and leaders over to Europe, over to the UK and to Scotland to see why they don't kill so many people. It's because they have a foundation of these 9 basic policing principles. We need to rebuild our departments on top of those principles.
I've got to get a break in. We come right back. More questions from our audience. Plus, a police sergeant who hugged a young protester, that moment that went viral. He's here next. And we're back. We have questions out. Rabbi Stephanie Colon is here. What's your question?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for hosting this. So in a conversation I had recently, just over the last couple of days, with an African-American staff member in our community, she's told me that every time her brother gets in a car, he is terrified, she is terrified that he's going to have an interaction with a police officer, that something goes wrong in it, and her brother is going to end up dead.
What's your question, real quickly? I don't mean to be disrespectful.
No, not at all. One of the things she has said to me is she's terrified, she's so scared, she's exhausted, that it seems like things are going to have to get a lot worse before they get better.
Oof.
And I guess my question is, in Jewish tradition, we're taught to ask the question, Im lo achshav ematai, if not now, then when? And so the question is, right now, what do we need to do? What are the policies? What are the commitments? What are the leadership? And what are the risks that we need to take?
Monifa, can you
Special
quickly?
prosecutors. We need to hold police accountable when they abuse people. They need to be brought to justice. Everything that I've been saying, and that's the hard piece. It's easy to have running man contests between the police and community kids.
Yeah.
But what's hard is to say, these are the police officers who have violated people in our community. They need to be taken off the force. They need to be brought to justice. That piece is not happening.
Okay.
That has to happen.
Right.
And I just want to add that the insidious attack on Black Lives Matter is really the most ridiculous part of all of this. Blaming them for the divisions that exist in this country is like blaming your doctor who discovers your cancer for your cancer.
Thank you.
Right?
I want to bring in Christine Quinn now. She's a former speaker of the New York City Council. Quickly, please, Christine.
Yes, I am presently the CEO of WIN, the largest provider of shelter to homeless families in New York City. And most of our heads of households are single mothers, mostly African and Caribbean American women. And I've got to tell you, they do not feel their children's life matters. They don't feel their sons' lives matter. How do I know that? Because when I ask them what more we can do for their sons, they start out by, every one of them, telling me their son's never been arrested, isn't in a gang, isn't in drugs. Doesn't do drugs. They feel they have to prove their son's worthiness to me. That comes in part from a stereotype that is perpetrated in society, not just by police, but by society,
Quickly,
that crimes
I have less than a
perpetrated by
minute.
blacks when more whites kill whites. How do we stop the debilitating effect of that stereotype from dragging black mothers and black sons down?
Mark O'Mara.
Quick solution. I think that who's ever going to be next president, we ought to have a cabinet level position, finally acknowledging that we need a race
Where's
relations
Sergeant Brett?
expert in this country, because we're not doing it, we're not giving it its due.
Do you have a mic, Sergeant? Sergeant Brett Barnum is here, and I'm going to bring in Sergeant Brett Barnum real quick. He's a Portland, Oregon Police Department. You recognize him. You may recognize him from you were hugging a young African-American boy 2 years ago, right? So tell us about this moment as we go to the end of the show here.
Well, I think the picture says it all. I'm hugging a young man who's looking for some resolve down in his own heart, and I happened to notice him, and I could have turned my back. I could have looked away. But like a lot of folks, like Dimitri talked about earlier, you know, I'm a police officer and I'm here to help my community. If my community needed help and Devontae needed help that day, I tried to provide it to him.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we all need to come together. And I hope we have some consensus. We could have done this forever, but I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I want to thank all of you here in the studio, and I want to thank everyone at home for watching.